Cthulhu and Casanova enter a bar. No, not really, but it gets pretty close to that in the game that we discussed today, Carnevale, a Spanish miniature war game set in this very strange, very bizarre world, which is at an intersection between a darker version of late 18th century Venice and the world created by Lovecraft, the world of Lovecraftian myths and creatures and cults and magic. It is a very strange thing, definitely an original theme. I don't think I had seen something like it in the past. So what you have here is, again, Venice, but the professors at the University of Venice are getting insane and losing their sanity when they're studying strange artifacts, strange statuettes of creatures with tentacles on their faces. There are mysterious creatures that look amphibian that go around Venice, cultists that are trying to summon mysterious creatures, magic that is being used in combination with technology. It is definitely a universe that has been created in great detail. In fact, the majority of this book is not about the books, about the rules of the game. The majority of this book is about the universe, the background. So I actually think that if you want to really enjoy the game, you will need to create scenarios and campaigns that allow you to bring the background into the game so that you have a strong RPG component. Otherwise, all that will remain pretty much unused. Because at the core, this is a miniature war game, which is about moving and attacking and wounding and inflicting wounds on your opponent, and of course defeating the opponent. I played some skirmishes in solitaire, skirmishes based on the system of the game, using the characters and the mechanics, etc., etc. And for reasons that I will elaborate in my conclusions, I don't think I am the most qualified person to review this game. Again, I will tell you later why this is so. But what I want to tell you for now is that this video today is not going to be a review in the usual sense of the word, in the usual way in which I make reviews. It is going to be an overview. I'm going to tell you about the game in general, just because it is not a game that is much talked about. I didn't see much information about this game out there, so you may still have some curiosity, you may still want to know more about this game, and my video will allow you to do so, and maybe you will be curious about this game and you will want to investigate the game more and maybe even play the game. But today, just an overview, just an informational video with at the end some impressions of mine, yes, but again, remember, this is not exactly a review, simply an overview. This is the book for the game. It is pretty thick, 170 pages. You can get the printed edition, but there's also a PDF available. At the end of the book, you have charts that you can photocopy. There are player rates that you can photocopy, for example, the templates for range attacks. And then you have 2 pages of rules summary, which are, well, fairly complete. This is not all that you need to know to play the game, but when you know these rules, you are pretty much good to go. You just need to select abilities for your characters, create your characters. The core mechanics are very simple. Again, this simple summary gives you an excellent idea of how the game plays. And that, of course, means that the vast majority of this book here is not going to be about rules. In fact, there is a large section at the beginning that tells you about the bizarre world of Carnevale, the historical background, the weird society, the magics, all that happens in this world where Casanova meets Cthulhu. Then you have less than 20 pages of actual rules with a lot of illustrations and examples. This is, for example, one of the very good illustrations. And these illustrations, well, are they not only good to show you how the game works, but I think also they show you how good the game may look when you're playing it with painted miniatures and with good models of the buildings and the setting. Again, just some more illustrations of that type. Then after you cover the basic rules, you have a section where you have the description of the universal abilities that the characters may have. weapons and equipment, terrain, magic, the spells that may be used. But these are mainly elements that you add to the game. These are not the core mechanics. And then you have a very large section of the book about how to create adventures and campaigns, how to create a squad, and then about the different characters. You have the different types of groups that are divided, again, by group. For example, the Doctors of the Ospedale with a general introduction to the group, and then an introduction, a description of each character of that group, which with the standard stats of that type of characters, say the Doctor, the Madman, the Pets of the Ospedale, which are scary monsters, doctors, nurses, wardens, and so on and so forth. And you have characters like this for each group. The patricians, and again you have a general group of patricians and then individual types of patricians, each with different characteristics. So as you can see, a lot of characters. There is nothing to complain about the depth and richness of the background of the world that was created here. Comic book fans, does this illustration remind you of anything? I know that it does ring a bell to me. Anyways, the basic ideas, the basic mechanics behind the game. Well, the core idea is the check. You need to take checks in this game. To do so, you roll a number of d10s that depends on the level of ability and the skill that you are checking. And each check has a level of difficulty. Unless it is specified that the level of difficulty of a standard check is 7, you need to roll the level of difficulty or higher. Each number that you roll, that is your level of difficulty or higher, is a success, is a hit, is an ace. In this game, successes are called generically aces. In this case, if the level of difficulty was standard, that is 7, I have 2 aces. And in this game, 0 means 10. You may have standard checks, such as this one. You may have opposed checks, that is, both players are checking against the same level of difficulty, and the player that scores the highest number of aces wins the check. And then you have the checks that you do for combat. Let me show you how combat works using some of the characters here. Suppose that we have a nurse that is attacking a warden. When you are attacking in close combat, you roll a number of dice equal to your combat value. So here the nurse rolls 3 dice, and the level of difficulty of the attack is the dexterity of the opponent, in this case 3. And, well, there can be modifiers based on weapons and other situations, but this is the general idea. In this case, look at that. The nurse scores 3 aces. Those are the number of potential hits that are inflicted on the opponent. From that number, you subtract the protection of the character, so 3 minus 2 is 1. The warden takes a point of damage from the nurse. And you check one of these boxes here to indicate that the warden lost a life point. When the level of life of a character reaches the area where modifiers are, then penalties are applied to that character. And this is pretty much the general idea. This is for close combat. Range combat is similar, but the standard difficulty of range combat is 7. It is the dexterity of the target only if the dexterity of that target is more than 7. And when you are attacking with range combat, of course, you have to check that you're in range and that you have line of sight. Other things, karma points are used to gain bonuses, to gain certain types of benefits, and they're recovered in specific situations. Action points, this is how many actions your character can execute during an activation. In a turn, players alternate activating a character each, a character per squad. And when your character is activated, the character can spend action points to execute combinations of actions from those available in the game. For example, all movements from this section cost 1 action point, which you can spend an action point to move your character, make the character walk, and then the character can move as many inches as the number in its movement value. If the character has 5, then the character can move 5 inches, or with different procedures you can run, jump, swim, And pretty much when you activate the card, you can spend your action point to create different combinations of attacks and movement. For example, you could jump and then walk to get close to your opponent and then spend an action point to attack your opponent. I have a complaint which is pretty big about this game, and it is that the mechanics feel very generic, feel very dry. You roll a mountain of dice at each step of the way, but then it just feels that these checks could just work in any sort of environment, any sort of theme, with any type of scenario. And this is disappointing in a way, because you have this very rich, very detailed, very thematic, very atmospheric background, and then actually you have a combat resolution that is just so generic and so dry. There's almost a gap, I think, between the theme and the mechanics. They just do not seem to be really tightly intertwined. There are more modifiers and more things that you may add that I did not have time to cover in this overview, but still at the end my impression is that the mechanics alone can hardly convey the theme, and that means that most of that background that has been created for the game remains unused or underused. And so here pretty much we get to why I don't feel that this is a game for me, and therefore I'm not qualified to review it, because I don't think that I'll be able to play it the way in which I suppose it should be played. I think that this is a game that can be enjoyed as a role-playing game or as a miniature game by somebody that is really invested in painting miniatures, building models, creating environments. Well, let's talk about the role-playing game first. There is so much background, so much information about the world of Carnevale that actually I'm surprised that the game was not released as a role-playing game with a section about combat. Since it has been released as our game with miniatures, then all that background almost feels unnecessary. I think that with the material that you have here, with the book, you should be able to create your own role-playing game, especially if you're familiar with general concepts of role-playing. I think that the role-playing game is that begs to come to existence, to be sort of dragged out of the book. I do not play role-playing games, and I do not have a group to play them with, and therefore I don't think I'm going to create or to put together this role-playing game that potentially is in Carnevale. On the other hand, I'm also not a person that is interested in painting miniatures, building models, creating environments. I just do not know how. I do not know how to paint miniatures, and if I have had the time to learn, which I doubt, in any case my miniatures will look completely ugly because I'm not manually skilled. That's the way I am. So I just like to play games that when they come out of the box already are ready to give me good mechanics and a good theme. I think that if you are a miniature person and you do spend the time and you do invest the energy in painting all the miniatures and creating, you know, the Venetian landscape and all the buildings and the backgrounds and the settings that the rule book describes, then I think that the experience can be very thematic. But again, you sort of like need to create the theme around the mechanics, whereas what I like in games is when the theme comes out of the mechanics. And maybe I'm also influenced by the fact that recently I played miniature games such as Surgeon's Miniatures or Wings of Glory World War II, which is the second edition of Wings of War World War II. And in these games, the mechanics are really so strongly, so tightly connected with the theme, are really inseparable. And there really, even if you do not do too much work around it, the theme just sort of like bursts out of the mechanics. As you play the game, the theme happens. To me here, the theme is not in the mechanics. So, bottom line is that I would like one day to hear or to watch or to read a review by a role-playing gamer or by a serious miniature person that played the game and can share his or her perspective on the game. To me, this game, well, it's a game that doesn't speak to me, doesn't appeal to me. It is simply a game that, again, being a person that is not invested in these two types of gaming, it is just a game that is not for me. It's that simple.